So,
Thanks for having me.
okay, we're here with Justin Robertson in the Blind Pig, Limerick, Bank Holiday, October weekend 2015. And we're just going to have a little chat. So I suppose we'll start with Manchester. I don't get there often enough. How is it these days?
I don't live there anymore, so...
You don't live there?
No, I moved to London about 2003. I still go up quite a lot. And it's great, yeah, the scene's really good over there, but it's changed. I mean, it changed very rapidly in the 2000s, like development-wise, and no when I lived there, no one lived in the city centre. Now it's like, you know, flats everywhere, and every time I go up there I get lost because they've rebuilt a whole new part of the city, but it seems to be thriving, yeah. As much as anything's thriving in the United Kingdom these days. I moved to Manchester in 1986, and I lived before that in the home counties, just outside London, which was very boring. So I went to Manchester to study philosophy at university and stayed. And then, kind of what you might call the Manchester acid house period happened, and I got kind of embroiled in all that caper, and stayed there for 16 years.
Well, what sort of sparked that, the acid house? Was there, like, can you remember a defining moment, or was it just
what one not many I can talk about, no, but I mean, because house music was really massive in Manchester before acid house happened. It was the sound of clubland in Manchester for when I went there, which was 86, and obviously before that as well. It was the backbone when London was much more rare, like a rare groove and funk scene. In Manchester it was like house, which I guess sort of goes back to the kind of northern soul sort of sounds that like something a bit pacier. But then, so I was going to Nude Night, Mike Pickering, Martin Prendergast, and there was a lot of other good parties, of trash parties. So listening to a lot of early house music, but at the same time wearing sort of 70s pimp clothes and flares and dressing like a sort of rare groove person. But and then acid house happened and ecstasy happened, and just forgot about what I was doing for a while. But it was changed everything. It just kind of gave it a whole cultural reference of its own. It became a sort of a tide that kind of took over, and it wasn't so much. What I find was interesting at acid house is not really the story of Ibiza or the story of ex-DJ going to Ibiza. And what's interesting for me is the fact that not like punk was a very art school London thing for ages, quite an elitist thing in many ways. But acid house, where the most interesting nights would be in small towns throughout the country, really rapidly. It was really egalitarian. It wasn't about being elitist. It wasn't about what you wore or what you knew, or it kind of didn't have an agenda. But that was the whole thing that made it so revolutionary. So that's why it's still relevant now.
Yeah, I think Limerick would have had similar parallels. The early days of Strictly Rhythm and the stations were definitely that, just a group of people turning up with no agenda. Definitely a lot of love in the room.
But that was the most revolutionary thing about it, because it was people like who would started hanging about with each other who never would have hung about with each other before. In fact, would have probably chased each other down the road with broken bottles.
Yeah.
Or like embracing each other and
hugs came out.
Getting involved.
Yeah, too huggy.
So no, I thought it's very revolutionary, and also the music that went along with it, the techniques of making it were very. Again, it was quite levelling to be able to do it. You didn't have to, be a virtuoso guitarist or anything like that.
And how do you think the sound has evolved over the last, I suppose, 20 years now at this stage? I sort of stepped out of listening to acid house maybe, I suppose, to be 10, 12 years ago, for no fault, just you go down different paths in life.
Yeah.
Sort of just swinging back around, foraging. But you sort of come back and you sort of listen and go, well, it's not quite as I remember it, but you can hear the elements.
It morphed and changed and then threw up all these different genres, drum and bass, dubstep, all these sort of sub things that came out of this one sort of area. and so it keeps evolving and it keeps changing as well. So people will recognise if you'd, fallen into a coma in 1988 and then woke up, this morning and came to a club, you'd recognise the familiar strands for it, but it would have morphed and changed. So it keeps developing. That's what keeps it interesting, because it's never static. It keeps moving.
You're no stranger to Limerick. Over the last 20 years, we can safely say you're a friend of Limerick. You've played many clubs around. You're back here now in the Blind Pig tonight. But there is a sort of double meaning to tonight, that you have an exhibition of art to bring along to flog us.
Yes. Very cheap price, very reasonable.
The exhibition is Everything is Turbulence, and that coincides with an album.
Yeah.
And the two of them then are the one piece?
They're connected, obviously. They're not... they're different formats but similar themes, so they're connected.
So they
made them at the same time as well. So.
Okay. So I suppose just to poke around that a little bit, when you're working closely with the sound, was that giving you triggers for the art, or vice versa, or you speak a lot about monsters?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the art sort of stuff is really like a celebration of mystery and uncertainty. So it's kind of exploring a fantastical world that's kind of not too. It's about celebrating uncertainty and adding. Hence, everything is turbulence. Is trying to. I always think that human beings have a tendency to try and simplify and explain things and try and pigeonhole things and to try and put frameworks around understanding things. So it's trying to destroy that idea and add. Celebrate chaos and uncertainty. Hence monsters. Monsters and death, pretty much the two subjects there.
And so what would trigger the inspiration to, like, you get up in the morning and you sort of go, right, do I go to the studio or do I go to the
same place? And they're all in my house as well. So.
Okay, so it's like hand on keyboard, hand on...
I call my studio Solitary Cyclist Studio, but it's just my spare room. So. The room next to my bedroom is what it is really, but I thought Solitary Cyclist sounded a bit more fancy. But it's basically my spare room, yes.
So you have a few collaborations on this, the album side of it.
Yeah.
One of being your partner Sophia.
My wife,
And your wife and Avery.
Daniel Avery. Yeah, and there's Lisa L from the Dark Horses.
And did their sort of influence lead into some of the artwork as well?
Not directly. I mean, my wife's obviously in the house and tolerates my strange goings on in the room.
We're getting back to the monsters, but
she's very tolerant of my my strange whims and goings on. She occasionally puts her head round the door and wonders what I'm doing, covered in paint or with a wire wrapped around my head or something. But so she sang on one of the tracks. And Daniel I've worked with for quite some time. I mean, he used to be called Stop Making Me before he was successful as Daniel Avery. So we've done quite a few tracks together. And we've also made this kind of, I don't want to call it ambient because it's not. It's more disturbing than that. But we've made a sort of beatless, 25-minute long piece about water, which won't be bothering the hit parade anytime soon. But it's quite interesting. But, so I've worked with him for ages. So that came out of a session that we'd had together. And Lisa is the band called the Dark Horses, who Richard Fearless put me onto. He produced their last two albums, and she's just a really excellent singer, and I like kind of the whole vibe of her band, so we just asked her to get involved. So that's how that came about. But yeah, the art side actually came from a sort of connected, because my computer broke down for 3 weeks and I couldn't make any music, record any music or listen to any music on my computer, so hence I started concentrating on painting. That's where the germs of the exhibition came from, really. So.
Well, I think we'll leave it at that and open to the floor for a few questions, and thank you very much for having a little bit of a Q&A with us. Cheers.
Thanks for having me.
Have you back again.
Cheers.
Anybody there wants to ask a question?